Welcome, everybody. My name is George Stark, and we're kicking off our fall editions of Think About Energy. And we're really blessed because this time, as we get ready to really relaunch Think About Energy, we're going to have somebody from API join us. You might not know, but API represents us in DC, and they're the largest trade association really focusing on our issues. Their new CEO, Mike Sommers, has taken the time this past August to come up and visit with some of the operators in Northeast Pennsylvania. And he had a wonderful visit. And, you know, again, from the community to educators to the workers, he had a chance to visit with them and talk with them. So you're going to get a chance to hear from Mike directly. But before we do that, API was kind enough to put together a short clip really detailing why Mike came here, what's going on in Pennsylvania and the Marcellus, and then what he saw. So if you would, Miss Natalie, could you run the clip for us? I don't know about you, but I get pretty excited when I see what we're doing and how we make an impact in a community and across the state. And as what you saw, those numbers don't lie. We're making a tremendous difference in Northeast Pennsylvania. And again, I was glad to be one of the teammates that got the chance to host Mike Sommers. So, Mike, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to not just be with us today, but also to be with us in August when you came up to saw the Marcellus hands-on. So thank you for joining us, sir.
George, it's great to be with you again.
Absolutely. I can't say enough about the visit. And, you know, we saw so many different pieces. You saw so much. I'm excited to go over community education, but this isn't about me. Tell me from your standpoint, sir, when you came up, what was your expectation? And what did you see?
Well, George, again, thanks for hosting me today. And thanks for hosting me in Northeastern Pennsylvania. It was an incredible trip. And just to put this in broad perspective, if you think about the fact that there are about 500,000 direct, indirect, and induced oil and gas jobs in the state of Pennsylvania. And as you know better than anybody, Pennsylvania actually represents, it is the #2 natural gas producing state in the United States right now and supplies about 7% of the natural gas that the world uses. It's an incredible success story, and a success story that wouldn't have occurred were it not for the ingenuity and the innovative nature of America's oil and gas industry. As part of my job as president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, I have the great privilege of being able to travel all over the country to see the operations of API member companies and the innovators and problem solvers in America's natural gas and oil industry. And the Marcellus, where Cabot operates and where many of the operators in the state of Pennsylvania have the privilege of operating, is completely different than any other basin in the United States. And it was just really great to see the workers up there and the pride that they take every single day in producing the energy that the world needs and that Pennsylvania needs. So it was a great place to visit, and I was proud to meet with many of the people up there who take such pride in the work that they do on a daily basis to supply this energy that is going to continue to be the backbone of energy throughout the world for decades and decades to come.
And I think that the piece that I walked away from was also the workers were happy to showcase to you what they were doing and really go all in on describing their professionalism, their educational background, the tools at their disposal, what keeps them up at night. So when you think about all you saw from that operation standpoint, did a certain few things sort of stand out that impressed you the most from operations?
Oh, absolutely. That we were able to visit a number of API member companies and other businesses up there that have benefited from the natural gas revolution that really started in the great state of Pennsylvania. So, for example, we were able to go to UGI's Manning compressor station and their liquefaction plant, which can liquefy about 120,000 gallons of natural gas each day. We obviously visited your sites at Cabot Oil and Gas. And what I was so impressed with is the great pride that energy workers in the state take in what they're doing. What they're doing, not just from the perspective of our economy, which relies on the production of inexpensive energy for Americans in the world, but you think about the pride that we all take in the fact that because of American energy independence, we're able to make decisions from a national security perspective that we wouldn't be able to make otherwise. We're in a completely different situation than we were just a few short decades ago when we were so reliant on other countries for America's energy. If it weren't for the state of Pennsylvania, we wouldn't be in that position. And the pride that your workforce has taken in pursuing this energy challenge is just inspiring to me, and I think should be inspiring to every American business out there. I also had the chance, George, as you know, to visit an incredible program at Lackawanna College in their new school of petroleum and natural gas. They opened their new headquarters, their new facility there when I was up there. Which is really providing the workforce of the future for natural gas production in the state. And what an incredible success story that is, where you have kids coming right out of high school, or maybe they've taken a break from their schooling, but they're learning the skills that are going to be required to continue to stay in Northeast Pennsylvania. It really meets what community colleges are supposed to be all about. You're providing the skills that for the jobs that are in the area. Lackawanna is meeting that challenge every single day. And it was really neat to see some of the graduates of that program in your operations, because they're providing for community needs and world needs by providing energy workers of the future. I also got a chance to tour the Invenergy's Lackawanna Energy Center, which is using natural gas to provide power for about 1 million homes in northeastern Pennsylvania. And in addition to that, I really concluded my trip with a visit to some of the key labor unions that supply the workforce for the energy system in the state of Pennsylvania. And what a great trip that was. They provide a backbone to many of the member companies that we have and ensure that we get the energy from where it is to where it needs to be. So a really great trip. I also had the great chance to sit down with one of your partners, George, at Williams, who provide the pipeline infrastructure to get that energy to where it needs to be. So all around, a great 3 days in the state of Pennsylvania, our keystone state, and just such a privilege to be with Cabot and other API member companies while on the ground.
And what was so nice is, again, that pride that we show through, we're always excited to talk about 90% of our workforce comes from the surrounding counties. You had a chance to interact with them. They're local. They care about where they work. They take that pride. And then something like as important as, where is the next worker coming from? And I know the folks at Lackawanna College were very happy to have you tour their facility. And they had their open house at the same time. I've since talked to the folks at Williams. The school itself has graduated 300, almost 40 students. So you're looking at 330, 340. Williams has had 70 of their employees come from Lackawanna College. So we know that the jobs are being hired locally. You know, the video, the PricewaterhouseCoopers and information. We know how Pennsylvania's economy is doing from wages and growth in jobs. So it was all on display for you. And it really, when you think about it, it didn't need to be put on display. It's just there. It's part of that fabric that you had a chance to see and touch and be a part of. So again, I know everyone I spoke to was happy to have you up there. Any other last minute thoughts on your visit?
Well, what I'd say is it was incredible to me to see this great rural area just embrace this industry because they know the key benefits that come from natural gas production in the state. And it's not lost on me. As I said, I get to travel all over the country. The prosperity that has come from natural gas investment and, Cabot's presence in particular in this area, I think has just been really the lifeblood of the economy up there. And it allows kids that don't want to leave the opportunity to stay and get a good paying job in their hometown. And that is really inspirational and something that we should all be aspiring to achieve. But this is what, of course, American Energy has brought that particular area. And I think, what Cabot has brought and what these other API member companies have done for this area is really impressive because that just continues to build and continues to grow over time. The restaurants thrive, communities thrive, and schools thrive as well because of the tax base. So the incredible investments that are being made up there that will continue for decades and decades to come because we know where the resources are, and those resources are going to continue to be used and profited from. That we're going to, as an industry, continue to be there for many, many decades to come, and that the jobs are going to continue to flow from that. So I was just so impressed with the pride, of course, of the workforce, but also what it has really meant for these communities. You see the vibrancy up there that you just don't see in a lot of other rural areas. So you have a lot to be proud of, and I was glad to be part of it when I was up there.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and I guess I'm sitting too still here listening to you because my lights went out. Maybe they'll turn back on when I move. But the other piece of this is, and again, I think this sets us up on our transition nicely, is this idea that you got to see firsthand the technology that we put into position for reducing emissions, because we know that's going to be a big thing. But that was one of the pieces that everybody from the industry across the board had a chance to show you. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the way I see it is there was a lot of positivity coming out of your visit less than a month ago, a little more than a month ago, I should say. But here we are now at a different phase in Washington, D.C. And could you sort of walk me through what you see happening there, sir?
Yeah, let's take a step back, though. If you think about the climate challenge, which is really what this emission reduction effort is all about, is how do you reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Let me first say that, one of the incredible things about what you're doing up there and what the American energy revolution has meant, it is because of this natural gas revolution that we've been able to reduce emissions in the United States. It is because natural gas has become more plentiful and more inexpensive that we've been able to replace coal as the number one source of power generation in the United States. So natural gas now provides about 40% of the power that Americans use every single day. That was not the case 10 years ago. And guess what the result has been? Emissions go down every single year as a consequence of that fuel switch from coal to natural gas. So from a broad perspective, what we've been able to do, because of the production going on in Pennsylvania, is this incredible environmental performance. And it could not happen without the Keystone State. So that's just from a broad national perspective of what we've seen. And we take a lot of great pride in that, and we brag about it to lawmakers every single day. And I also always argue, George, as you know, that the most important environmental movement in the world right now is the American natural gas industry. It is the reason that we're able to reduce our GHG emissions. And now what we're trying to do, and we saw this at the UGI Center, what we're trying to do is we're trying to export that environmental progress all over the world through liquefied natural gas. You have a small portion of that, but a lot of that, is in other states as well, where they're liquefying, incredible amounts of natural gas and then exporting that to countries all over the world so that they can have that same emissions reduction that we've seen in the United States. There are a lot of people right now in Washington, unfortunately, who don't recognize what we have done in this country and how we've reduced our emissions totals. So what we're focused on right now is making sure that we're educating lawmakers on that, what the environmental record is of that energy revolution. So we spend a lot of time working with lawmakers so that they understand that you can't have an energy future, you can't have an environmental future without natural gas. So right now what's going on in Washington is there's a lot of discussion about how we deal with the big climate challenge. And one of those efforts right now is an effort focused on reducing methane emissions within our industry. But I saw in your operations that you're focused on that already every single day. So we're trying to communicate with lawmakers right now about what the industry already has done and what the appropriate policy response should be during this key time in Congress.
And when you think about all the efforts that you have seen, the benefits to the community, the growth in wages, and the innovation, yet here we sit with, a reaction to a proposal at, $1,800 a ton for methane emissions. How do you react to that one? And what you see is could be really a job killer when we always think that energy ought to be bipartisan. It's pro-American, it's American jobs, it's for growth, it's for all the companies. We help lower senior citizens' energy bills, low income. We have all that benefit. And now we have a proposal on the table that's looking to sort of take us sideways and backwards.
Well, let's be clear about what Congress is actually talking about right now. They're not actually talking about taxing methane. What they're talking about is taxing production. If they were talking about actually reducing methane, that would be one thing. But that's not what they're talking about at all. They're talking about taxing the most efficient producers, those producers, by the way, that are likely to be the ones that have invested significant dollars already in reducing their methane emissions, not because they want to necessarily reduce methane emissions, but because they're looking to plug a hole in how they pay for other things. API wants to work with Congress. API wants to work with the Biden administration on what the best way is to reduce methane emissions throughout the economy. But that's not what this effort is focused on at all. It's about raising money to pay for other things. So we're working hard right now in Congress to help educate lawmakers on what the appropriate response is to methane emissions, because we know that we can do more. So at the beginning of this year, just as an example, API endorsed the federal regulation of every well in the United States, existing and new wells, to ensure that the right regulatory scheme is in place to ensure that we don't have methane emissions. So we're working through the regulatory process right now on that. We have answers. We also have a program at API called the Environmental Partnership that is all about reducing methane in all of our operations. That's a voluntary program and has seen tremendous results in reducing methane emissions. And we think that's the best way. We have the Environmental Partnership. The EPA should regulate methane, and we're working with them on that now. What we don't need is a money grab from the United States Congress, which is going to be based not on methane emissions, but on productions in productive regions. We don't think that's the appropriate policy response, and we're doing everything we can to fight against it.
So when you think about the things that you're fighting against, Do you want to touch base on a couple of the other ideas that you see? You mentioned it. The federal regulation of methane is not a bad thing. There are some bipartisan initiatives that you guys have underway. What are some of those upsides, sir?
Well, look, as you know, George, API actually released in March our climate action framework. So this is a 5-point plan of things that we think the federal government should do. It's also things that the industry will do on its own to address the climate challenge. So we've put forward these proposals to the United States Congress that are based on market mechanisms to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As I often say, the enemy is not oil and gas. The enemy is emissions. And that's what we're really focused on, is ensuring that we're focused on the emissions that come and how we reduce those emissions. As you know better than anybody, we have a natural economic incentive to reduce those emissions because those emissions come from product that shouldn't be escaping, that we want to sell into the marketplace. So it's in our best interest to reduce those emissions, which is why our program, the Environmental Partnership, is so very, very important. But I encourage those of you that want to learn more about the API climate initiatives to go to api.org/climate to learn about that plan, because this is a plan that, as I mentioned, isn't just about what the federal government should do, but what the industry will do. As you know, Congress, the administration, we live in a divided governmental time. And I want to make sure that as an industry, we're meeting the climate challenge, even if our Congress cannot. And so we're stepping up to the plate as an industry to do the things that we need to do, and then encouraging Congress to do this in the right way that encourages American energy production, so we're not ceding that energy production to other parts of the world.
And I want to have two additional items there that I know that really bring this home from your visit and what you're telling the elected officials in DC. One of the visits, you had the chance to watch us with the equipment installed, saying this is a second-by-second calculation. We're capturing the data to really show we're not guessing, we're not estimating. We actually have the equipment here recording any emissions that we're seeing of methane. And again, those are some of the pieces that we're excited that we have that technology, and then we can go to EPA and talk to them about real life, real time emissions. Here's what they are. Let's not have just a simple formula. But I also recall distinctly when one of our interns had the chance to talk to you about how he was manipulating, how he was implementing, how he was making certain that information was run efficiently and effectively. And it struck me that here is a 21-year-old kid, I think he's a junior or senior in college, and was committed to reducing those emissions, focused on it, using the best-in-class technology. And at the same time, as easy as you and I are having this conversation, he was telling you how that was done. And that is the piece we have to make certain our elected officials in DC see and appreciate.
Well, that's one of the problems historically with this kind of one-size-fits-all approach that the government often takes, is that instead of actually encouraging production and innovation to improve over time, it locks in old technologies that they're going to require one particular kind of technology, rather than recognizing the innovative approaches that our membership are taking every single day to reduce their own emissions. So that's why this government knows best, Washington-based approach is never the appropriate response to how we reduce emissions over time. And what I saw at the Cabot facilities is a real focus on reducing emissions within your own operations that far exceeds any regulatory or any estimated approach that comes from Washington, D.C. And we should be empowering people to continue to innovate and continue to reduce emissions, not with some government's decision on what fits the industry. because I know every single day that your operations and your R&D are focused on new technologies to improve your own operations.
Mike, one of the reasons we have this broadcast, Think About Energy, is just for that reason. We want people to sort of stop and think about it. I know I shared with you, I have 3 daughters, and we always have this conversation around the dinner table about where your food comes from. And it's always the grocery store, and that's not the case. It comes from the farm. And that's what led us to have some literacy around Think About Energy. I think we're to the point now where the folks that are actively engaged in this broadcast are paying attention. They're learning more and more and more. What would one of the things that you would want our viewers, our listeners to be thinking about so that they can become their best industry advocates?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, George, you and I talked about this. I have 3 kids as well. And, the energy literacy that we all have to do on a daily basis with our own kids and our own families, I think is really important. I remember, for example, explaining the difference between gasoline and natural gas to one of my kids, turning on the stove and showing this is natural gas, and what you put in your gas tank is gasoline. So that, first of all, it has to begin at home. Because I think the energy literacy that people have is significantly less than we even realize, even in our own backyards with our own children. So it has to start with your own families, and around the Thanksgiving table or the dinner table, we have to be ready to engage in those kinds of conversations because it is so very important. Because you're right, people don't know their food comes from the farm. People don't know that their energy or where their energy comes from either. So that's a really important component. The second thing is, we need people who work in this industry to stand up for this industry. Some of the best spokesmen for the industry, don't necessarily come from the American Petroleum Institute, but they come from the people on the ground. You need to talk to your lawmakers. You need to, educate Congress on where that energy comes from and what a difference it has made for the American economy. We talked about the 500,000 jobs in the state of Pennsylvania. That's 11.3 million jobs in the United States. It's almost 8% of American GDP. And as I mentioned, I think one of the most compelling arguments is what it has meant for American national security. If it weren't for this industry, we'd still be getting most of our energy from overseas. And Americans don't want to be held hostage. They don't want to be dependent on any other country. And that's where we were just a couple of decades ago. And if it weren't for the energy revolution that really took hold in the state of Pennsylvania, that's where we would be today. And so that energy education has to be talked about every single day at the kitchen table, and then all the way to Congress and your state legislatures as well.
And it's fun because, again, you visited Susquehanna County, you saw the gas being produced, and one of those conversations I was having this summer with my family was the athletes at the Olympic Village are being cooled by natural gas produced by Cabot in Susquehanna County. What do you mean, Dad? Yes, it gets on an LNG, it gets through the Panama Canal 28 days later from the ground in Susquehanna County to an electric generating facility in Japan, making certain that the cooling, the air conditioning was provided by us. That's the piece that we're excited about. That's the piece that we don't want to be held hostage. We want to use this as a natural effort to promote energy independence, what we have going on here. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to see it firsthand, to really take part and talk to the folks over the barbecue who are truly doing their darndest every day. And then you had a chance to see new students coming into this industry and the pride that we can instill upon them for having the best class technology, implementing it, putting it forward. I know that we will end our broadcast with some places that folks can go. Energy Citizens will be one of them. We're going to direct them to. Another location will be some letter writing that we have specifically as Cabot Oil and Gas and some of the other companies here in Pennsylvania, encouraging people to say to Senator Joe Manchin, keep up the fight. We need you. We hear you. We also want to make certain that folks like Connor Lamb or Tim Ryan in Ohio understand the value and the benefits that we bring. And at the same time, even Senator Casey in Pennsylvania, we want our voice to be heard so he sees it. We're going to do those things on our end. I'll give you the last second, though, to say what more do we need to do to make certain that all this prosperity, wages, jobs, economic development continues. You'll have the final say, sir.
Yeah. So look, I'd say, first of all, tell your story. We're in this industry. We're an industry of geologists and engineers and people who are focused on numbers. The numbers are important, but the stories are more important. Tell your story. Tell it to your lawmakers. Tell them what this industry has meant to you. The people of the America's natural gas and oil industry and those that have benefited from it. Tell that story. Go to Energy Citizens, which is the API program that where you can sign up and communicate directly with your lawmakers and continue to fight for this industry, because I believe that it is literally the future of this country. That if we can continue to be this economic powerhouse, we have to have an energy system that meets that challenge, that meets our ability to continue to produce the best businesses in this country. And all of them depend on American energy and American innovation. So, and it started all right there in the Keystone State. So it was a great trip to northeastern Pennsylvania. And George, it was really great to be with you today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We will stay in touch, Mike. Thank you.
All the best.